Last week, the Globe Theatre in London announced a new play called I, Joan, about the legendary 15th century saint Joan of Arc. But this play is not really about Joan of Arc, the actual historical person who led a French army to major military victories before being captured and burned alive at the stake at the age of 19. This play is about a fictionalized, non-binary version of the saint. The Globe explained in an announcement on Twitter, quote, "Our new play, I, Joan, shows Joan as a legendary leader who uses the pronouns they, them. We are not the first to present Joan in this way, and we will not be the last. We can't wait to share this production with everyone and discover this cultural icon." So, first of all, shouldn't the play be called We, Joan, if it's they, them pronouns? But of course, grammatical consistency is the least of the problems that we have here. Accompanying the announcement is a promotional image showing Joan of Arc frail, dirty, sullen, and wearing a chest binder. On their website, the Globe continues its defense of the portrayal, claiming, quote, "We are not the first to present Joan in this way, and we will not be the last. Regarding the use of pronouns they to refer to a singular person has been traced by the Oxford English Dictionary to as early as 1375, years before Joan was even born. Regardless, theaters do not deal with historical reality. Theaters produce plays, and in plays, anything can be possible." Now, it's true that they has often been used through the centuries to refer to a singular person. That's true. But that's only when you're talking about a singular person in the abstract or hypothetically, or if you don't know the individual's sex. So, for example, somebody cuts you off in traffic and all you see is their back bumper and you don't know who it is. You might remark that they are an a-hole. Or if you're more dedicated like me, you might speed up so that you can get a good look at the person and then cuss them out with more specificity. But if you're speaking about a specific known individual, the pronoun they makes no sense and serves no intelligible purpose. There is no precedent in the English language or any other language of using they to refer to a specific man or a specific woman instead of just saying he, him, her, or her. And there is certainly no precedent of individuals selecting their own pronouns for themselves and demanding that others abide by that preference. There is no precedent for that. That has never existed anywhere in the world, and it certainly did not exist in medieval France. Now, the theater takes refuge in the fact that theatrical productions don't have to deal strictly with historical reality. And yes, there is indeed a long tradition of events and people from history being partially or totally fictionalized for the sake of telling a story. But in this case, they're fictionalizing Joan of Arc in a way that completely negates nearly everything that made Joan of Arc significant to begin with. The whole point of the Joan of Arc story, the reason she's remembered by history and has been revered down the centuries, the reason that she's a patron saint of France, the reason that she's beloved as one of the great Catholic saints, is that she did all that she did as a woman. To erase her womanhood is to erase her. This really isn't very much different from reimagining Frederick Douglass or Martin Luther King Jr. as white men. And something tells me that this theater, nor any other theater in the world, would be quite so artistically open-minded as to host a stage production depicting a black civil rights leader as a white dude. You know, the appetite to fictionalize history, the appetite for fictionalized retellings of historical events seems to be rather selective, shall we say. Well, today's world is kind of a scary one sometimes. Too many people don't seem to care about the truth. Moral standards have flown out the window. And I'd argue that it's all rooted in people becoming less religious. That's why it's more important than ever that we take a step back from all this craziness and keep our relationship with God strong. And the best way to do that is by praying every day with Hallow. Hallow is the #1 Christian prayer app in the US. It's like Calm or Headspace, but rooted in Catholic faith as opposed to the religion of leftism. Hallow offers over 5,000 audio-guided prayers, meditations, and Christian music tracks. Some of the most popular prayers include the Bible in a Year with Father Mike Schmitz, minute meditations, and meditations for sleep as well. They also have prayers for kids and so much more. Hallow helps me find peace and calm throughout the day, helps me sleep better too, lower my anxiety levels, and teach my kids not to be terrible humans, which is also an important part of this. Let Hallow help you find your peace and strength throughout your day and also strengthen your faith. Go to hallow.com/Matt Walsh or text PRAY to 1-855-944-5684 and get an extended 3-month free trial during which you'll have access to all 5,000 plus meditations and prayers. That's hallow.com/Matt Walsh or text PRAY to 1-855-944-5684 for 3 months free. Reclaim your peace in this crazy world. Download Hallow today. But the greater problem is that the people pushing this stuff aren't actually willing to admit that their fictionalization is merely a fictionalization. Over the past few days, various academics and historians have come out of the woodwork to try and vindicate the queerified Joan of Arc. The gay news site Pink News featured an article written by alleged historian Florence Scott claiming that, quote, gendering Joan of Arc isn't that straightforward. She writes, quote, Joan is a particularly elusive and complicated historical figure. We cannot possibly access Joan's understanding of her own gender or how she related to the gender roles of her day. We can only look at the available source material and interpret how she expressed herself. The picture is complex. Gender, as something that is constructed, evolves over time. That means any role we ascribe to a historical figure, man, woman, or non-binary, is anachronistic, muddied by modern conceptions of gender. That doesn't mean we can't relate to Joan's experience of gender, just that there's a whole spectrum of ways to relate. Women have a right to be inspired by Joan as a strong woman, acting in defiance of a patriarchal society. But those of us who are queer or non-binary should also be able to see ourselves reflected in her transgression of gender roles and refusal to conform. In taking such inspiration from medieval figures, we need to be aware we are placing our modern experiences and values on someone who didn't share them. Whether we conceive of Joan as a woman, non-binary, or even trans-masculine, and I think all three are valid historical readings, we must remember that we cannot define her. We can only interpret her. Well, actually, no, we can define her. We can define her in many ways. Okay, define means like if someone says, who is Joan of Arc or who was Joan of Arc, we can give an answer to that question. We can define her. We could say that she was born in France. We can say that she was martyred on May 30th, 1431. We can say many objective things about who she was and what she did in between those dates. We can say that she was a human being, and we can say that she was a woman. There is nothing complicated about any of that. But as always, the MO of the LGBT propagandist is to make murky even the clearest water. It is to create fog and confusion wherever they find clarity. It is to unload a dump truck full of meaningless jargon right into the middle of every conversation. And it's also to rewrite not only our current day reality, but history as well. And that effort to rewrite history is now in full swing. Over the last few days, other academics and historians have come out to argue that Joan of Arc, may not have been non-binary, but she was at least non-binary adjacent. Or maybe she was non-binary, because this is how it goes, right? First they say, oh, no, we're not claiming that Joan of Arc was actually non-binary. Oh, no, actually, we are claiming that. How quickly we make that transition. And not satisfied to simply desecrate Joan of Arc's memory by trying to posthumously recruit her into the LGBT cult, they've now moved on to other historical figures. Because this is the other thing that we know the left always does, right? They always double down. And so when they come along and say, well, we're going to portray Joan of Arc as non-binary, people are upset about that. Their response isn't to back off. It's to say, oh, you know what? Just because you're saying that, not only was Joan of Arc non-binary, but all these other historical figures were too. The Daily Mail reports, an academic writing for the Shakespeare's Globe Theatre has argued that Queen Elizabeth I may have been non-binary too. In an essay on the Globe's website, trans awareness trainer Dr. Kit Hyam, that's not really what's important. What's important is trans awareness trainer is a job title. And this person referred to the Virgin Queen with they-them pronouns, saying, Elizabeth I described themself regularly in speeches as king, queen, and prince. The essay was published on Monday, August 8th, and was published in defense of the portrayal and said that the common portrayal of the story as pragmatic gender nonconformity in a patriarchal world denies historical existences of trans experience. The Leeds-based Dr. Hyam, whose pronouns are they, them, or he, him, compared Queen Elizabeth I to 10th century English ruler Ethelfled, Lady of the Mercians, who ruled Mercia, what is now approximately the West Midlands, after the death of her husband. Dr. Hyam said Ethelfled was later described as conducting armies as if she had changed her sex to take on a male-coded military, which was in some sense for Ethelfled to become male. The writer and academic says that Elizabeth I chose to strategically emphasize their female identity or their male monarchical role at different points. Now, essentially, just to clarify as much as we possibly can, what these academics are arguing is that because these women of history did things not traditionally associated with women or not traditionally expected of women, they must not have been women. As always, the trans cult works to rigidly and fanatically reinforce the very gender binary that they pretend to be breaking down. In their world, it's impossible that a woman might simply elect to do masculine things. Because if a woman does act in such a way, then she's a man. Or at least she's non-binary. Either way, to sacrifice her femininity, even to the smallest degree, is, according to trans activists, to sacrifice her very womanhood. Now, we can easily see why they're so desperate to find historical analogs for all of the gender identities they've made up over the past 12 seconds. They're desperate because they claim they didn't make any of this up. They claim that people are born trans, born non-binary, that these identities are deeply ingrained inside a person. And if that's their claim, it becomes a rather significant problem that these deeply ingrained and inherent identities never made an appearance anywhere on Earth for the whole history of the human species up until just now. It's not just a problem. In fact, history alone completely delegitimizes their entire worldview. All of history testifies against them. Their solution, therefore, is to retcon their worldview back into history. It's to start draping rainbow flags over the tombs of our ancestors. In some kind of perverse act of ideological necrophilia, they violate the dead, dragging them into their sexual cult. Their war on reality is not just, therefore, happening in the present. It's also happening, all the more so, in the past. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and click the notification button to get more content like this. If you want to watch or listen to the full show, head to dailywire.com and subscribe today. You can also listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.